Hey everybody, this is Dia Mike, and this is the next campaign diary for DOIP. We're into session 6, going on to session 7. And man, I tell you, it's hard to articulate the kind of game we had last Friday. We didn't play as long as we usually do, like by 30 minutes. We played for about 4.5 hours here, so the statistics from that game, I don't even remember what they are. I'll just let them speak for themselves. But you know, it was one of those campaigns, if I could just speak as a DM, that everything just kind of worked really, really well. Things gelled together well. I'm talking from combat to role-playing and decisions. You know, a damn near perfect game, to be honest with you, and I love those moments. I don't have a lot of them. I'd say our games are pretty above average. I mean, not to be braggadocious, but I think you get good players and things work out. I mean, it's just, I think that's one of the secrets and the keys to having a Dungeons and Dragons game that works really, really well, is that the players are comfortable, they know each other, they're doing, they're making great decisions, they get along, and that really just adds to everything that happens at the table. That's, I think, some of the magic there, and I think that's why I'm so very cautious and careful about who I bring to my tables, and hoping that people, making sure people can gel together well and whatnot. And it's like a director who goes out and shops for the best crew, the best editors, the best cinematographers. It's made me realize, and I've always realized this, to be honest with you, I approach D&D as if I am making a film. And I always kind of think of who are the players involved. And even in my own prep, I spend a lot of time thinking in D&D in terms of cinema and how I want things to go as far as music and, action and how that's going to be shot and put together at the table, and of course the story moments and the role-playing moments, right? I've always approached Dungeons and Dragons as a film production, and I don't know how to escape that. It's just what I've always done. So it's hard for me, to get back to my opening point here, it's hard to articulate just how awesome last Friday's campaign was. And if I were to tell you the details, it was pretty, you'd say, well, that's pretty basic. It just kind of, you had combat, and we did, and then we went to this role-playing moment, and that was the night. That was it. It was 4.5 hours of just these two, typical vanilla pillars of Dungeons and Dragons. But it was just so well done. Maybe we all had too much Red Bull, who knows? But it was a lot of fun, and I just really enjoy those games. And so it's hard to reflect on it. I really wish I would have recorded it. I recorded actually a lot of Hoard of the Dragon Queen, never released it. Maybe one day I will, I don't know. But it's just one of those games I kind of wish I had a camera somewhere that could have captured it, because it was so much fun. Now, if you watched the last campaign diary, we ended up on Butterskull Ranch, and of course we had to finish that up. And we had to finish that combat and get rid of those orcs that were causing problems, and we did. We started the night immediately. I actually started the night with a music intro from Vermintide 2 soundtrack, and I can't remember now, track 11 or 12. I don't know. It's like this really punchy music. And I just it's a cutscene basically. I opened with a real-time, cutscene set to music, set to the pacing, and I described what was happening. It only ran like 1 minute and 30 seconds or something, and immediately got into the combat. And the characters, again, there's so much risk going on in the combat lately, and I think it's because people aren't bunching up. I see that often in a lot of campaigns, and I've experienced that dead on, in 2 years of running Tyranny of Dragons. But people were really separated out and doing their own thing, keeping eyes on one another, but really doing their own thing. And I think that changed the battlefield. As a DM, I can only do so much when it comes to the battlefield. Yes, I can change the battlefield itself. Yes, I could give more hit points or AC or new weapons, just to throw your game off a little bit. But really, sometimes it's the players that really have to be, take the risks that really change things up and actually make the battle more dynamic than anything I really could have done. There's only so many hoops I can jump through, right? So them separating, doing their own things really made things risky and made the threat even more powerful. And I had a lot of fun with that combat encounter. But here was another dilemma for me. I've just ran 2 years of Tyranny of Dragons. And so you get to the point in like Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat, more Rise of Tiamat, where you can't sneeze and not hit a dragon, okay? It's just they're everywhere. And so the dilemma, as I'm sitting here prepping for that last Friday's game, I thought to myself, how do I reintroduce dragons? We've done this already. And when you're so high level too, you almost, sometimes by, the luck of the die, but you almost start to wipe the floor, even with dragons. And so how do I introduce this new dragon and make it interesting, make it a little bit of fun? Well, here I went back to another cutscene technique, a real-time, what I call real-time cutscenes. Again, it only lasted a minute 15, minute 20 or so. And I used a musical track from something that I rarely pull from. I like to keep music tracks or music albums to fit the genre I'm playing. So in other words, if I'm playing Star Wars, I'm going to play Star Wars music, right? If I'm playing Lord of the Rings RPGs, I'm going to play most likely Lord of the Rings Lord of the Rings music. But in this case, I wanted something punchy and different to introduce the threat of the dragon, because up to 6 sessions in, I have not dropped a single hint of the dragon. I mean, it's been a rumor, but no one's seen it. It's not interacted with anybody in the campaign. And I decided this was a night to do it. It'll make its grand appearance. So I pulled from this, maybe over here, I always point to the wrong direction, Star Wars Mandalorian, Episode 2, and I used a track called Mudhorn. Now, I do a lot of radio drama and audio work, so I went in there, took that track, edited it down to the moment I needed, and compiled it, maybe shaved off 15 to 20 seconds, and brought it into the campaign. And that's how I introduced it. And I would play it for you just so you can get a feel for it, but you just Google it or go on YouTube, you'll find the entire soundtrack you can listen to. Just listen to the Mudhorn. That is the track that I used to introduce the dragon. As they were wiping the floor with the orcs, they got down last orc, cut him down. Here comes an anchorite of Talos who has transformed into a boar and is trying to charge into the combat. And the next thing I know, all the wildlife runs past everybody in the battlefield. From the horses to the pigs and everything just collectively loses its mind. Flocks of birds, I switched the B and the F. Flocks of birds suddenly fly out of the forest, and the next thing I know, the dragon swoops by overhead like 30 feet above ground. It was immediate and it was intense, and the Mudhorn soundtrack emphasized this. Always said, and I'm sorry, I'm sounding like an echo chamber and I'm repeating myself, but music should be used sparingly, and it should be used in what I call key frame moments. It's another movie production term that talks about, when you do production art, you pick 5 or 3 or 5 really pivotal moments in your film, and that's what you render, that's what you bring to life. And that's what I try to do with music as well, is use it sparingly, but when you do use it, it comes in with a bang, it comes in with a punch. People are going to remember that moment because of how selective and how careful you were with it. So that's what I use, Mandalorian Star Wars music, to introduce this dragon. The dragon did not speak. It did not interact with the players. Matter of fact, it didn't really care what anybody down there was doing. Because I changed Butterskull Ranch into more of a horse ranch with tons of horses everywhere, it saw an opportunity to feed. So it was flying above them. Now, I'm narrating this cutscene. I'm narrating directly to the music. And there's a moment in the music where it just kind of slowly goes into this fading, it's like a synthesizer music that just kind of, it makes you think of memories, like you're just kind of, you're dazed and confused, right? I use that opportunity to show suddenly ghosts on the battlefield. Not just any ghosts, a group of 5 warriors dressed in paladin armor with unique weapons, all following the dragon. Now, I don't want to give away any of that here, but if you're running the campaign, you probably know what that moment was alluding to. At least I'm pretty sure you do. But then the music kind of crescendos back up into this kind of archaic fury, animalistic nature, and I had the dragon just kind of swoop by, knocking over the entire some of the buildings there on the farm. People were knocked prone because of all the wind, and all the dragon did was come down, grab huge clawfuls of horses, and took right off again. Some of the horses fell from the sky because it couldn't hold on to them, but that's all they saw. And as soon as that music ended, that encounter had finished. So that was my dilemma. How do I introduce these dragons? We've seen them a million times already, right? And I think it was pretty effective using Star Wars music to introduce this kind of fantasy threat. They spent the night there at Butterskull Ranch. They helped Big Al, I think it was, Big Al. He was actually hanging upside down in the blacksmith, his blacksmith shop, or whatever you want to call it. Not an outhouse. That's not what you do in an outhouse. His shed, let's say, which I think in the book it says it's actually crumbled, but I still had it intact. He was hung upside down in ropes above the fire pit because the orcs were interrogating him, trying to figure out if he had any more horses or whatever else, whatever else he had on the property. And of course that blew over. They had to find Big Al. And of course the rest of the night, the last portion of the Butterskull Ranch was finding the farmhands, securing the location, burying the dead, and they spent the night at Butterskull Ranch. And I had a role-playing moment there with Big Al, who kind of shared a little bit of his past. This is not in the book. These are just things I've added, but talked about, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. They spent the night. Everything was safe. And we did a lot of role playing and dice rolling to make sure, they could find all the farmhands and things like that. The next morning, they take 6 horses with them because, Phandalin needed some horses and they were trying to figure out what was going on at Butterskull Ranch. But right before they left, Big Al wanders over and says, look, he opens up a small chest and gives them the mithril chainmail, which they're supposed to receive in this quest. But I kind of wanted to give it a story. I didn't want to just be like, here's mithril, thanks. And what I changed here was that this chainmail actually belonged to his son who had fought against the Orcs a long time ago and was killed during a skirmish. And his wife was so distraught with grief that she stopped eating. And she also died. So Big Al was kind of living by himself, and this was just this link to the past, and it was just sitting in this trunk, and it wasn't doing anything. And he saw these heroes come in, they saved him, they fought off the Orcs, and he felt like this was meant for something. They needed this to carry their fight to the Orcs. So he handed them the mithril chainmail. And I just wanted to add a little more story there. It's nothing in the books, nothing like that. So if you're running this, if you want to steal it, go ahead. But if you are running this, I would encourage you to maybe add a little bit there to it. Not just something that someone finds in a chest or Big Al throws at them, at the end of the adventure. So they left Butterskull Ranch with horses in tow, and they stopped they didn't stop. As they were passing Croneberry or Cryogenic, whatever the heck it is, Marigold was there, and she stopped them and asked what had happened there at Butterskull Ranch. She was ecstatic that the Orcs had been destroyed, so she decided to cut a deal with him. Now, here's some of the problems I think with this adventure is that there's a lot of locations. There's a lot of locations nobody's going to see. To be honest, it's just going to go over everybody's head. If people don't follow up on rumors, which I don't really expect them to do anyway, they're not really going to see all these different little specks of locations that are scattered all over this adventure in the Sword Coast. But Marigold had made, this is her home in Neverwinter. She has a spot there, right? Well, the Circle of Thunder, this summoning area, was encroaching on her territory. So she cut a deal with him. This is how I introduced this territory and an upcoming territory. She said, look, if you take out these Orcs, I will show you a way of defeating the dragon. Weapons that could be very, very crucial to your adventure. So that's how I cut that deal, right? I didn't use the rumor tables or anything like that. I had it be more of a direct threat to somebody who was living in Neverwinter. And Marigold's not really this nice person, to be honest with you. She's kind of, she's a witch. But it was a good deal. It was too tempting to pass up. She had not opposed. She had given them intel before they got to Butterskull Ranch. She's not proven herself to be a threat. She wants these Orcs gone just like everybody else. And on top of that, she will help them defeat the dragon, who she also wants to be gone. So they took that information and they cut a deal there. And they said, look, in 3 days, she said, in 3 days, I will come to you. Let me know what you decide. Because she doesn't like hastiness. She doesn't want people making decisions like that, right? So they go back to Phandalin, and this is where we wrap up the evening. And it was just this is the part that's really hard to articulate. I can think of it as an improv group, where the improv group, as you work with people longer and longer and longer, you have a connection that kind of builds, and you know how to feed off one another. And I think that is what really started to happen here when we got back to Phandalin. There was just, let me just capitalize it like this, just a lot of great role-playing from all the NPCs and the players just talking to one another. And there was this really, I think, crucial moment where they had to figure out, what do we do next? Everybody had seen the dragon. Let me just put this up here. This is an update to the Phandalin map. I added a bunch of tokens because the day they saw the dragon, well, it also flew over Phandalin. So here I am, I'm updating Phandalin as we play. It's getting bigger, more people are showing up, or more people are taking up arms. So there's a feeling of change, and the stakes are starting to ramp up a little bit. And I think it's important if you're running this as a DM, you want to show these bumps, these kind of, if you look at a graph, like it's just getting bigger and bigger, like a heartbeat. Like, ba-doop, 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 ba-doop. I mean, that's not, you know what I'm saying. Things are escalating. And so there was this kind of contention between everybody, like, okay, we need to clear out Axholm because now the dragon is here. Now it's a clear threat. I need somewhere to, take my town people. No, we need to go do the Circle of Thunder or the summoning area because that could lead us to something unique. And then I think there was a third thing in there, the Loggers Camp. The Loggers Camp also could be in trouble. We need people to go there. So there's like these three conflicting things that had to be worked out at the table. And that's where all this great role-playing came in between people. And there was just, let me just illustrate one moment. It was just the thing. It reminds me of the improv stuff. That people, where they make a connection, they start to work with each other, and they can feed off each other's rhythms. There was a moment where people were kind of, in a sense, arguing over, like, which way should we go? Well, this is important, that's important. Wester is trying to say, well, this is important, you should go to Axholm. And Carson, my sheriff of the campaign, is like, well, no, we need Axholm, yes, but, clearing out more orcs is very important. Well, there was a moment where Wester looks to one of the gnome, Glim, and, they start whispering back and forth. Like while everybody else is arguing, they're whispering back and forth because Wester had paid Glim under the counter to go to the Loggers Camp because it was an illegal activity. That's how I've spun it, at least. I think it's in the campaign book or not. I can't remember. But I spun it as an illegal activity, kind of something on the side Wester was doing, and not too many people knew about it or should know about it. And he had paid Glim under the counter by himself when he'd come into the office during one of the campaigns, during one of the sessions. And as they were all arguing, the next thing I know, people kind of got quiet, and it's just Glim and me going back and forth, and we kind of just suddenly shut up, all in character. Everybody just still in character, and it was just like this perfect little moment, right? That's the stuff that's so hard. Like, I could tell you this, but it was so funny in the moment, and there was just so many great jokes and different things going on that night. So it was just a really fun campaign. And Abatha Gwyn has taken a liking to William, and there's a relationship bonding there. And she's grown concerned. She did give him a potion of superior healing. She's making lots of potions for Fandolin. She's like kind of working in overtime right now, but she saved one for the group, and she has a liking to William. Don't worry, my romance in my games is very G-rated. But she invited him back to her cottage. Nothing gonna happen. Trust me, nothing gonna happen. And that's where we ended it. Like, I had William kind of walking down the town through the construction, going into her house. He kind of checked his armor. He could see her through a little glass pane as she was folding laundry inside her cottage. He straightened up. He put his gauntlet up, knocked on the door, and that's where we ended it. I just like those kinds of little things. Again, I see D&D as film, but also I run it almost like episodic television. I just felt like that was a good place to stop because the players had made a decision of where they were going next, which was to Axholm. And I felt like, look, if we go that direction, that's like a whole nother thing. That's going to be hours worth of play. So it was a good place to stop. So I will release you no more about this past session. Thank you for watching all these. We have more to come. We don't play this Friday, but we play next Friday. And I think we're getting close to the end of this campaign. So maybe three or four more sessions, and we'll probably be done. I think. I always say that, and I'm always miscalculating, but I think that's kind of close to where we would be. So it has turned out to be kind of a short adventure, but oh man, just a great adventure. All right, guys, see you in the next one.